Let's move 'em out, let's move 'em on, let's keep it quiet, don't let on that they are sleeping in the streets in the good old USA. Well, there's a bridge over the river, it's a home for...
New Mexico is full of magnificent, wide-open spaces, so you'd think there'd be plenty of places for people to live. It surprises people that homelessness is a serious problem in New Mexico, affecting people in cities and in small towns. Most people who are homeless have had terrible childhoods, which at best left them unable to make it in the world, and at worst left them traumatized and mentally disabled. Who is homeless in this country? Well, 25% are under the age of 18. 55% ran away from home or were forced to leave home. 38% are members of families with children. 22% are victims of domestic violence. 20 to 25% suffer from mental illness. 22% are veterans. Many have substance abuse problems. These problems, plus lack of affordable housing, create the homeless population here. It is not a simple problem, but there is something we can do about it. During the next few minutes, you will meet some of these people and hear their stories. These are the people New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness is concerned about and working to help.
I saw her one day, just a face at the shelter with empty brown eyes that...
Like so many homeless teens, Tamara comes from an abusive home. Her mother left her with relatives when she was 2 months old. After that, Tamara moved from one relative to another until her mother came back for her. By that time, Tamara was 9. Living with her mother and her mother's new husband, Tamara took care of 3 siblings. She also took care of her mother, who was bedridden. But her mother wasn't happy with her.
Yeah, when I was a kid, if I would get in a fight with my mom, normally after a fist fight, she would lock me in my room. And basically there was no food, no water, no bathroom. Another time my cousins were there, and basically my mom we got in a fist fight about the dishes because it was 2:30 in the morning, she wanted to do the dishes, and I was like, hell no. And so we got in a fight, and everybody was in the living room, and the next thing I know, I'm being dragged in there by my hair in front of everybody, and she just kind of stops, and and I was like, whoa. And so I got locked in my room after that.
As a teenager, Tamara ran away several times.
Whenever I would run away, I tentatively didn't like going to my friends' houses just because they would call the cops on me. So I would end up sleeping outside. I was actually staying in an abandoned house in Los Colonias. They were building it, and they just stopped for like a year and a half. And it was about... I don't know what month it was. I know it was snowing outside. I got into drugs whenever I was 11. Basically weed. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 12. Still smoke cigarettes. I did coke about 2 years. It's about heroin about a year and a half. And that really screwed me up too, just because that was my way of getting my love and my comfort that nobody ever had given me.
Tamara tried to get help from social services, but when she told them her story, they didn't believe her.
They never did believe me. I would be covered in bruises. I would go to school, and the teachers would always call them because I would have just belt strips going across my arms and my legs and my back. And my 5th grade teacher, or 6th grade teacher, Miss Ramirez, I went to school and I had welts on my arms from being hit with a belt. And she just started crying, and she's like, won't they do anything? And I was like, no. And like whenever I had to leave her class to go to middle school, she just started crying, and she's like, oh my God, I was so worried about you. And I went to middle school, same thing happened with social services. I got taken home by the cops, and they said, again, the kids said nothing was happening, and I was like, oh my God. And basically, you know, if somebody's covered in bruises and they still don't believe you, I was like, what are they going to believe?
Tamara got good grades in school. In 10th grade, she even got straight A's. But she had to drop out of school to make enough money to live. Tamara is now 17, and she's in the Transitional Living Program at Dream Tree Project for Youth in Taos. She is off drugs. She has a job with AmeriCorps. She plans to get her GED and go to college.
Take me from these streets of pain, from these roads of war.
Robin is 30 years old, but the root causes of Robin's homelessness started in childhood.
My dad was like a little physical violence, you know, verbal violence and stuff like that. And times I was a hard head, but, you know, I just didn't like the way he was doing me. So, you know, I ran away from home several times. It's like 11 when I first ran away from home. And stayed gone for like 3 weeks. And, you know, by the time I hit 13, you know, I ran away one time. My dad says, don't come back. So I didn't, you know. Stayed gone. And
Robin suffered from depression that was neither diagnosed nor treated. Many people with untreated depression use illegal drugs and alcohol in an effort to relieve some of the symptoms, and that's what Robin did.
Did a lot of coke and pot and stuff like that, drinking, just, you know, real heavy, and kind of like just stayed to myself, you know, like real depressed state.
At one time, Robin was married and had children, but with his depression and without education, he had trouble supporting his family.
Just had to survive out here, you know. Most of the time I've been surviving on minimum wage, you know, just barely making it. And when I did have jobs, you know, it's pretty rough. Sometimes I had to work 2 jobs at one time. And when I had my kids, you know, it's like no time to spend with the family and stuff like that, you know. You get depressed, you know, because you're working your life away and you're not getting much.
He lost his family and his home. Life on the streets hasn't been easy.
I just camp out at night, find places around through the city and make a spot, you know, and hope the cops don't come along and harass you or give you trespassing tickets or take you to jail, you know. Got another time I was sleeping and a couple of guys come by that were drunk. I got hit in the back of the head with a rock, you know, put stitches in the back of my head. And it's pretty rough. You have to watch out where you lay and, you know, hope nobody messes with you. Gotta be careful.
Robin also has physical disabilities.
On my right leg, the kneecap's about a ½ inch lower than what it's supposed to be. The bottom part of my leg's a ¼ inch over. And then I have a bone spur up under my kneecap. So it's like, you know, I can't do a lot of standing, can't do a lot of walking. And, you know, and being out here, you know, I can't get a whole lot of medical help. So it's like, you know.
Robin is getting help from St. Martin's Hospitality Center in Albuquerque. He's hoping the counselors will help him find a place to live and help him get on his feet.
Well, you know, it's like, I would like to have a decent job, you know, make good money, but it's not easy, you know, when you don't have a good back for it, you know. No computer skills, no basic job skills, you know. Mostly just like fast food restaurants, you know. It's kind of rough, you know. Can't just go get anything that you need. Just had to survive out here, you know.
We can share our anger and our pain.
Many homeless women are victims of domestic violence. April is living in a transitional housing apartment at the Valencia Shelter for Victims of Domestic Violence in Belen. She left her second husband, who had a problem with drugs and alcohol.
He had heart attack symptoms. He kept going, you know, my face hurts. Feels like somebody's sitting on my chest. I'm like, oh my God, right? I really love this man. So I go across, I get some aspirin from his mom and dad. I come back. There's a drug dealer in the driveway. He pops the aspirin, walks out, makes a drug deal, and 10 minutes later he's getting high.
He not only abused alcohol and drugs, he also abused her.
I had a panic attack. We're arguing, and I passed out. Well, I passed out in the kitchen, and when I came to, he was stepping over my body. Heartless man. Heartless.
Her first husband was also abusive. April had married him when she was 17.
He beat me while I was pregnant. I finally, well, you know, when you're in that situation, you can't just leave, because things always seem to work out where you don't have any friends. Your family is very distant from you, even though I have family here. I've lived in New Mexico for a long time.
The pattern of abuse in April's life started much earlier, when she was a child.
My mom loved wrong men, so from being abused as a child, physically, sexually, the whole 9 yards, I was taken out by the state when I was about 14.
Elva was one of 10 kids. Often she didn't have food, shoes, or appropriate clothing, so she says she wound up living on the street, taking what she needed. After years of stealing when necessary and joining a gang, Elva wound up in prison.
Because I didn't learn nothing until I was in prison, and I was like 20. My English, I didn't know anything until I went to prison, so it was kind of bad, you know.
Things weren't much better when she got out of prison.
I went looking for a job, and I was working cleaning the offices, but they found out I was a convict, and they fired me real quick. Like, you know, but at least they gave me a check for 2 weeks, you know.
Having a prison record made employment difficult, and being homeless was dangerous.
When I went I hitchhiked from here to Denver, and I stayed over there 2 weeks, and we were staying at this building with no light, no nothing, and I got raped there, and I got kind of scared because I never believed in that. And then when it happened, I didn't know, you know, for somebody to point a gun and you just seen that little thing, that little bullet, if it's gonna go off, you know, or not. And it was kind of crazy.
In between stays in prison, Elva was homeless. Still, she had 5 children. When her children had children that they were unable to care for, Elva gathered them together and took care of them, all 13 of them.
I had 5 kids of my own, and one of them decided to play Russian roulette, and he blew his brains out. So he left 8 kids, you know, scattered, so they started bringing them to me. So it was hard for me to get them, so we started living like, I would go to friends' houses, and they would let me in one day, and the next day I had to sleep on the porch with all the kids. And, you know, this went on for a couple of months until I got it together with the welfare to see that, you know, my son had really died, and I had all these kids, and I was going kind of crazy because, you know, all this bill of where you bury them, and it was kind of crazy. But then I came over here, and we started living with people. Then I went to visit one of the women that my son had, and I found 3 kids, and for 4 days she didn't go get them. So they were kind of like homeless too. So I picked them up, and that's how I ended up with all these kids. And when that happened with my son, my daughter kind of went kind of crazy, and she left 5. And then I went to town one day and found out she had 2 more, so I went to pick them up. So that's how I ended up with all these kids.
Today, Elva uses the money she gets from welfare to rent a house and to pay for food for her grandchildren. She still considers herself homeless because the money is for the kids.
No daydreams, no night screams, no rest from days gone by.
Dennis lives in an apartment in Santa Fe, but until 2 years ago he was homeless. At age 35, Dennis developed schizophrenia. Before that, he had been an Army quartermaster and a sailor in the Merchant Marine. But schizophrenia meant he could no longer work to support himself. He received disability income from Social Security, but it was not enough to cover his basic expenses plus housing.
it's a matter of money. It's not a matter of was I beaten when I was a kid, or I've been married 3 times prior to that and had 5 children. When they put me on disability, I was in California, and my Social Security check, just like it is today, will not pay rent. That's when I became homeless.
For more than 20 years, he was homeless off and on, often living in his car, using his limited income to pay for food and gas. For a while, he drank too much until he joined Alcoholics Anonymous. Life as a homeless man was not easy.
Well, that's true. I know people have died out there because they didn't get their own place. You know, I've seen people beat to death. Now, the day that that front page article came out on me, when they did all that research for that editor and made that front page story on the homeless and me, well, she had to give out the amount of my check, my Social Security check. Well, you always protect yourself when you're out there. You don't ever let anybody know you get a check because it just makes you a sitting duck. Okay, the day that it came out, it had the amount of my Social Security check and where I was at. Well, that very night, 3 guys tried to jump me in there. I mean, with big rocks, you know. Well, they wanted my money, but I had to give them the slip. You know, and I went down and got the police, and the police went after him the next day, but I never camped back up there again. I mean, these are some of the conditions of homeless. You know, it's real deadly serious out there.
When he did ask for help, he was turned down more often than not by a system that he felt was stacked against helping the homeless.
And then when you come to places like this, they said, well, we're not going to rent to you. You don't have any rental history. But then why is it that they deny me and people like me? Because we don't have a rental history.
Fortunately for Dennis, some influential advocates came to his aid in 2000 when he arrived in Santa Fe from Taos, still homeless and still sleeping outside. A reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican did a story on him, and an aide in Senator Bingaman's office began helping him with his applications for subsidized housing. As the weather turned cool, Dennis went to St. Elizabeth Shelter, where he received more help until he got his own apartment.
Well, when I first moved in here, like a lot of homeless people, I had to sleep by the window with the window open. I mean, and just about all the homeless, if they've been out there for years, it's like that. Well, because you've been sleeping in the weather for so many years, if you're boxed in with heat, you can't. It takes a long time to get used to it. But like I said before, when I first moved in here, I had a complete nervous breakdown after just a week. It's like I'm still in the trauma of being homeless. That trauma is still with me. It just is. I mean, you don't live out there and in fear of your life every day and every night and just have it go away. I mean, I don't know if that trauma will ever leave me.
Talking to the homeless in New Mexico raises a lot of questions. Why would a mentally ill man like Dennis spend so many years living outside before getting housing? Why do children like Tamara and Robin have no other choice than running away and living in the streets? Why does someone like Elva have to steal to get food and clothing? As we have seen, homelessness is often the result of trauma that happens early in someone's life. Traumatic violence, an unstable home life, or the stress of being in war. Homeless people become either temporarily or permanently disabled and need help to get out. Some are able to get well and to find work. Others need to be recognized as disabled and cared for appropriately. The 2 things all homeless people need are housing that is affordable to them and social services that can help them overcome whatever problems they have. With enough services and housing, no one would have to be homeless. Then we wouldn't have to ask ourselves, with all this open space in New Mexico, why are there people who have nowhere to live?
Well, it's a 62 Chevy, it's a home for 4 with a dog and 2 kids and another at the door. They were robbed last night on Central when the car broke down. Now they're sleeping on a side street near downtown. What can be done about this problem? They all say and wring their hands. It's a scar upon the face of this land. Let's move them out, let's move them on. Let's keep it quiet, don't let on that they are sleeping in the streets in the good old USA. Well, there's a bridge over the river, it's a home for 4, maybe 7, maybe 8, and tonight maybe 3 more with just a